Okay, I think that makes it official. Everybody is here. Welcome back. Today, new week, day 15 officially, and a new phase of the 21-day journaling that we're doing. And this new phase, as I've been addressing over the last 2 weeks, is the phase of integration. This is the time of learning the lessons and bringing them into our system and making them part of who we are and especially who we are becoming. Today, I'm going to do something that I usually don't do, which is I'm going to have to lean on my notes. And the reason I'm going to have to lean on my notes is because the foundation of memory today is shaky. And I do trust that wherever I flow will lead to where we have to go. But as we're starting a new week, I want to be very precise, and I want to make sure that everything that needs to be shared comes out and that I don't miss any points. As I'm preparing to get into this and welcoming you all and seeing your faces, I want to say thank you and encourage you to share in the chat right now just a sentence on how you feel this experience is going for you and what is becoming clear for you at the moment. And as you do that, I want to begin to also reflect on where we have been. And this is where I need to rely on my notes because all of these last 14 days seem to be folding into one another, and I cannot distinguish one day from the other. I love that Keith says he's always happy at 11 a.m. Awesome. So am I. And I must say that no matter what is happening in my life and is occurring, this return to seeing you on a daily basis gives me a great sense of stability and anchoring. And if I allow myself to think about next Sunday, I actually feel a little sad because it will be the end of this phase of our relationship, but the beginning of a completely new one, which is what I always lean on to celebrate. So I'm going to share here really quickly before I dive into where we've been, some of the comments that are coming through, which I think are very positive, and maybe we can lean on for adding color to what I'm going to share, which is that Hope says clarity on where I need to put my time and energy. And that's awesome that that's already happening. And it's something that we haven't even specifically talked about yet. Loving the consistency and growth this program brings me. Awesome. Well, I love that it brings you consistency and growth because it also does the same for me. It is pushing me in ways that I didn't expect to be pushed or challenged. And that's something that I couldn't do without you here. So thank you. Ashley says, I'm becoming more aware of how to reach my highest expression. Every day it becomes more clear. Clarity is such an important piece of this because clarity is what gives us the freedom to express ourselves. And that, if you ask me, is exciting because it's liberating, it's freeing. Kyra says, I want to have more of these conversations with other like-minded people. It is clear to me that this lights me up and fuels my passion for life. That's amazing. As I've probably shared here in some capacity or during coffee club or other conversations, is that I do not do well with small talk. Talking about the weather or the small things gets me distracted and bored really quickly. So I'm glad to know that there are some people out there who are willing to go deep and are not afraid of exploring that which is unclear sometimes for the sake of clarity. Kay says, the prompts are difficult for me to find the answers to, but once an answer comes to following, clarity feels freeing. Yeah, that's excellent. So this is excellent. These questions that are coming with the prompts shouldn't be obvious. And if they are obvious, you're probably missing something. So as long as you're being challenged a little bit, whether you're able to express it in the moment of doing the journaling or not, you are pushing yourself forward. Furthermore, today you will learn that you're being pulled forward. You're being attracted to a new future, a new self. Kristen says, this process is incredibly valuable. More clarity happening almost daily. Wonderful. I love that the clarity is part of the theme here in the comments. I am becoming aware that I am very clear on what I need and that I want to meet myself more often and read and embody through action what I wish to live my life to feel like. Wonderful. That's Sarah. I'm so glad that you are aligning feeling with expression and where you want to express yourself in the future, or today being the future expression, because that's actually where we're going this week. The week of integration is we are diving into the future. We're going back to the future. And I'm going to address what I mean by going back to the future in a second. Madalena says, intense and meaningful. Yes, intensity is when we put focus on something, and we put focus on something with intention. So this does feel intense. No matter how you try to move with it, it's going to feel intense because you're doing it daily. And that focus, that attention that you're putting onto it is bringing intensity. The good thing is that it is meaningful, as you were saying. And it's great to look forward to 11 a.m. But then again, that certainty of 11 a.m. journaling will only last so long in this form. The question is, are you going to carry that certainty or parts of that certainty, the subtleties of that certainty with you as you move forward? Kristen agrees on the small talk thing. That's why we get along, Kristen. And Ashley says, yes, my prompts start sometimes obvious. And then when I dig deeper, the answer I wasn't expecting shows up, I assume. So yeah, that's wonderful. It's surprising. There's uncertainty in the certainty of the practice. And that's great. So all of this that was just shared here in the chat is that which lives around the steps that we've taken. And this is where I do need my notes to keep up. On day one, we explored what an emotion was. We allowed ourselves to work with the ungraspable. On day two, we allowed what an emotion is to be embodied. We started addressing it from our physical perspective. On day three, we moved into learning how to mark our emotions in time. And we did this in order to be able to see movement. Then we moved into day four, where we began the process of remembering. And we started going into the past. We went 24 hours into the past, and then we went into a lifetime of past. And in our memories, we noticed that certain events have been recorded. And those events that were recorded influenced, as we addressed on day 5, who we are. And it gave us clarity in what our profile is, what our expression is in this world, in this current moment. And that expression led to the conversation around our value, our self-worth. And that value, coupled with emotional variability, is what allows us to notice that that which we are experiencing is influencing how we are choosing to make decisions. Remember, we talked about choosing to choose. Once we jumped into week 2, we started addressing not only emotions, but the needs. The needs were the anchor that were drawing us somewhere, were moving us somewhere. And they were becoming aware to us. We were able to notice those needs because of the emotions that we were experiencing. And with that movement into getting our needs met, what we were exploring and starting to experiment with was the concept of health, wholeness, completion, fulfillment. And once we had an idea of who, what, how fulfillment, health, wholeness looked like for us, we coupled that with our relationships. And this is when we started to do a record of the past through our family tree. Once we were able to address the community that we belong to, the gene pool that we belong to, and the people that are around us supporting in ways that maybe we don't feel supported or don't seem like support at times. But when we notice the influence of where we came from as a whole, now we are able to go back inward and notice how we are navigating that collective, that group. And that is where our craft came out. Our craft being the vehicle that we currently use for our specific expression. It's the vehicle that packages the information that we are sharing with the world. And as we are sharing, we moved into, I think this is day 5. Yes, day 5, into how that craft contributes to something bigger than ourselves, how that adds value, how our self-worth and expressed through our craft is adding to everything around us. And then what is it based on? What is that ability to express ourselves based on? Well, it's based on a number of routines, a foundation, and that those routines are anchored in that which we deem certain, that which we deem secure. And in that security, we manifest, we express our habits. And those habits we call routines. And those routines are paths. Now we depart from the routines and we are moving into what we could call design. We are now becoming architects of our future. We have been in the past. That was on week 1. We came into the present on week 2, and now we're moving into the future. And something to keep in mind here is that our past influences our present, and our present influences our future. And something to notice or to be aware of is that because our past influences our present and our present influences our future, we spend a lot of time reconciling that which has happened or that which has yet to happen. And it takes us away from being in this very moment, fully present right now. So what we're going to try to shift gears into is to turn in a different direction. And what does this mean? Well, I want you to imagine the following. I want you to imagine your present self looking at your past self. And as you're looking at your past self, imagining yourself speaking to that person that was in the past in a way that could guide them through the experiences that they were going through, that you were going through at the time, with the clarity that you have from the vantage point that you currently are in, meaning from this present moment. You know how things unfolded. Remember, we said that life can only be understood in retrospect. Now imagine with that understanding in retrospect, yourself looking back and guiding that past self. If you can see that, now this is what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine as your present self is turning back to guide your past self, imagine your future self doing the same for you in this moment. Your future self, as you turn back to speak to your past self, is speaking to you and your present self. If you can imagine that just for a little bit, and feeling the certainty that comes from your present self guiding you through what you're about to experience, think about how that makes you feel, what that brings to you. If you're struggling to feel that, I want you to go back to being your present self, looking back at your past self and guiding that person. How do you think your past self would feel knowing that your present self, the one that has gone through it, has the answers? whatever it is that you may be feeling, I want you to notice the sense of certainty that resides there and how that sense of certainty exists right now in this moment in our present self and in our past self. And we have been able to do that very well with our past self in the last 2 weeks. Now we're going to address it from our future selves. We're going to see that certainty that exists there and how that future self is guiding us where we need to go. Why is this important? Well, this is important because when we are able to operate in a way where we allow past, future, and present to unfold at once, what we are moving towards is emotional integrity, the ability to acknowledge our most basic needs, and thus producing what we could call a fruitful future. And a fruitful future is one that has outcomes that are nourishing. And I want you to think about that word right there, nourishing. What does that mean to you? How does it feel to be nourished? When you allow yourself to feel what it's like to be nourished, now I want you to integrate that. I want you to bring that in to your system. And I want that to be the anchor for everything that we work on this week. Your future self, the design of that future self, that future expression, is the source of unlimited nourishment. If this is something that is hard to compute or to assimilate right now, don't worry. Let the work that you're going to do this week show that. And something that we've been doing in the last 2 weeks without even knowing it is we've been designing. And I want to share a few principles of design that I think are important to acknowledge as they are the building blocks to what we're doing here. The first principle for design is contrast. Contrast is noticing the duality, both sides. And with that contrast, finding some clarity. The second principle is balance. When you are able to balance two ideas, two emotions, an experience that is happening outside, coupled with an experience that is happening internally, there's a balance. In everything that we're doing, we are observing contrast. We are bringing into balance. Remember, homeostasis. That's what we're always trending to. We're trying to come back to base level. That's what our bodies do naturally. The third principle is emphasis. The principle of emphasis. And emphasis is that which we choose to put our attention on. And when we choose to put our attention on it, it is expressed in a way where other people can see it. Other people can participate in it. Emphasis. What are you putting emphasis on? The principle of emphasis is key to keep in mind when we are architects of our future, of our lifestyle. This one is a good one. The principle of proportion. How much emphasis am I putting on each thing? And how is it being expressed? We hear often that one of the hardest problems is to solve the work-life balance. There is contrast there, work and life. Do you work to live or do you live to work? Which one are you? If you are one who is willing to participate in balance, you're neither. You don't work to live and you don't live to work. You simply are. And that are-ness, that beingness, that is lifestyle. What we're doing is we're designing the lifestyle. The lifestyle is the expression that is not recorded in time, but rather in actions that are unfolding in this very moment that produce the outcomes that we want. Now, the outcomes that we want should not be confused with desires. Desires is kind of like saying, I want to lose weight, but I also want to eat ice cream every night. Okay, that's wonderful. But you know that if you get attached to your desires, the losing of the weight will not happen. So how can you navigate those desires to get where you want to be? How can you even include in a balanced way those desires in a way that still allows you to get where you want to go? This is where we're going to be playing with needs, wants, and desires. There's going to be a balancing act. And we can even translate the word want to a goal. What is a goal? Some people don't like the concept of setting goals, but goals are markers. Goals can be a common ground for us to meet at. The next principle that is important to keep in mind for design is hierarchy. If you look at nature, there is a hierarchy. There's an order to things. And it doesn't have to be from top to bottom. It doesn't mean that you have to be the top predator. It just means that you have to notice where you are within the hierarchy and how that which you're choosing to participate in fits into that hierarchy. And to also realize that just like in nature, there are cycles, thus the hierarchy also changes. The next principle is repetition. Showcasing repetition, just like you've been showing up right now for 15 days, is a key principle of design. With repetition follows the next principle, which is rhythm. How are you doing your repetition? Rhythm has a code, has a language. It has the ability to carry information. Rhythm is key. And with rhythm and repetition, you have a pattern. A pattern is the structure that you're going to follow. And here's something that's interesting. The word pattern comes from the word pater, which in Latin means father. It's the grid. The opposite of pattern is a matrix. A matrix is also, in Latin, the womb, where we all come from, the creative expression. In between the lines of a pattern is where we create. That's where we're spending time right now. We're spending time in that creation and giving birth through this pattern. And that's what we've been identifying. And then overall, what you'll notice is that there has to be a principle of white space. White space in design is giving space to breathe. This was something that when I was writing my book, the designers that I was working with said, give the reader more space on the page. Let their eyes rest a little bit and allow that space to guide them where they need to go or where they are curious to go. White space, create more space. more time to be bored, more time to not do anything, more time without routines so that you can notice the routines that you have and change them if needed. With white space comes the principle of movement. In space, you can see action. With movement, it's also important to include variety. The principle of variety, as we've talked about before, is what brings health. Emotional variability brings health at an emotional level. Biodiversity, variability in the ecosystems, in a set of organisms that work together. That brings health. And then finally, there is the principle of unity. Everything, the space, the movement, the variation, it all works together. It has a flow that works. That's why we've been looking at how did we flow in our emotional state? How did we flow in our physiological state? How did we flow in our sleeping state or our recovery state? How do they work together? How can you dance to different levels of a song? Somebody can be dancing to the strings, the other person can be dancing to the percussion. Same thing happens here. That's what we're working on. And with all of these principles comes coherence. Everything makes sense. When you see the complete picture, it makes sense. And I share these principles with you because they will be present whether you are aware of them or not during this week. And the first thing that we're going to do for this week on day 1 of week 3, day 15 officially here, is in our journaling, we're going to focus on our imagination. We're going to allow ourselves to expand into the future through our imagination. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to, at the top of our journaling page, we're going to write day 15, the date, location, and then the first prompt is, how am I doing? It's a brief check-in. This can be the valence arousal model if you want to do it. This can just be a few words. Just describe how you're doing. You've already done the technical. You already know where you fall approximately within that model. Now we can let go. We don't have to be so practical, so pragmatic, so perfect. Just describe how you doing. Do a brief check-in. The second prompt is asking yourself, is there anything that you need to say or share before you start your journaling practice? Is there anything you have to get off your chest right now? Is it a to-do list that you've been thinking about all night and you just have to write it down? Write it down. Is there something you want to share or you're processing? Share it. Do you want to write about a dream that you had and you've been enjoying remembering the dreams? Write about the dream. These two prompts that I just shared are interchangeable, by the way. You can start with that, which you need to say before getting into the practice first, and then doing a brief check-in. It doesn't matter what order you go in. And now with our imagination, we're going to begin to remember the future. And this is important, remembering the future. Remember is reconnecting, putting the members back together. And how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to allow our imagination to go into any future self that comes up for us. It can be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It can be closer to the day that you are ready to leave this planet. And I want you to ask yourself the following. Where are you? Who are you with? What does it look like? how does it feel? Now, what is different between that which you are seeing, feeling in the future to that which you are seeing, feeling in this moment? What are the differences? Describe what you feel in those differences. Describe what emotions are coming up for you in those differences. Once you've described that which is coming up emotionally and noticing those differences from the future and now, I want you to put your pen down and simply sit with your eyes open or closed in silence. And I want you to feel the future emotions. And I want it to be a feeling, an emotion that is elevated. And I want you to couple that elevated emotion with the clear vision that you described of what your future self looks like, is doing, who they're with, where they are. And that's going to be the end for day 1 of week 3. Today I went a little over time, but I think it was worth it. Maya says, to me, it means feeding the soul. I'm uncertain as to what that was referring to, but I think it's the nourishment, which I love. Kyra says, I feel like this requires a lot of trust in ourselves. Challenging, but I like where it's going. It's time to take full ownership, full responsibility of everything. And to realize that that ownership is what gives you freedom. Ashley says, this is so interesting. I have been getting many downloads from my future self over the last week or so. This was a very comforting exercise. I'm glad to hear that. We are constantly speaking to ourselves from a different place. A reminder is to today remember that as we anchor ourselves backwards towards our past, we are allowing our future self to anchor towards us. The future is all knowing. And with that being said, enjoy this last week. Don't rush it. Just flow with it and allow for everything that you've done for the last 2 weeks, the intensity that has come with that, to start to give the fruits that you didn't know you were seeking. All right. With that being said, much love to everybody. Thank you for being here another day, and enjoy. And I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Bye.